On today's show, the Cleveland Cavaliers should trade for a wing this summer, and they should aim high when they make that trade.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. The best way you can help grow the show. Listen every day. Leave a review. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on YouTube. Again, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show brought to you by Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets. The series starts tonight. Game Time has got you covered. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Danny Cunningham, new here at Locked On Cavs. Very excited to continue to talk about this team with you. Very happy to be your first listen each and every day as I come at you 5, if not more times per week. On today's show, really want to talk about where the Cavs should go this summer in the trade market. I think it is very important for them to address the situation on the wing. I don't think right now that they are good enough at the small forward position. It's not that they don't have good players there. It's that I think they need to improve in that area. And I have been talking about trades for the last couple of days, right? On this show, we have talked about maybe trading Darius Garland so Donovan Mitchell is the guy in the backcourt. Or maybe trading Jarrett Allen so Evan Mobley can really blossom as a full-time or at least play center more often than he does. And I do want to address that because I do see, and I read the comments, I very much appreciate you guys commenting on YouTube or tweeting at me at RealDCunningham. I very, very much appreciate that. I want to address some of that stuff here before we really dive into this. But so many of the comments I see, particularly when it comes to trading one of the guys that has made an all-star team, when you talk about Jarrett Allen, when you talk about Darius Garland, and I get it, right? Like, you don't want to just give up good players because good players, they're really hard to find, right? Like, how many games have we watched with this team over the years where they didn't have enough good players, where we were watching some pretty bad basketball teams? So now, why would you want to trade them away? I totally get it. And it's not, when you think about these trades, at least for me, the way I look at it, I don't look at potentially trading someone like Jarrett Allen or Darius Garland as saying, you know what, we don't need an all-star here. We don't need this talent. And it's also not about those guys not being really good. I think Darius Garland's really good. I think Jarrett Allen's really good. But what I think should be important this summer, especially as it pertains to this conversation about adding some more talent on the wing, it's not about trying to discard all-star talent. And I also think it's important to bring up with this conversation, it's not as if I'm sitting here advocating to trade those guys for draft capital, for draft picks, right? That's not what I'm doing. I'm thinking about turning one or two of those guys into maybe someone that's not a superstar, just as Darius and Jarrett and to this point Evan are not superstars, but can you turn one or two of those pieces into an all-star caliber player on the wing? That is what I think is a really, really important discussion this summer. That's, I think, something that could take this Cavs team to the next level. I have a couple of names I want to talk about. The first one is Brandon Ingram, New Orleans Pelicans. Obviously played for the Los Angeles Lakers once upon a time, has been an all-star at a point in his career. I think that the Cavs and the Pelicans are a great match in the trade market this year. I think a lot of what the Cavs have and might be willing to part ways with if they're going to acquire an all-star caliber player like a Brandon Ingram is exactly what the Pelicans are looking for. Where the Pelicans right now, Zion Williamson's awesome. Brandon Ingram, really good player. CJ McCollum, really good player. They've got Herb Jones, who is a terrific defender. Trey Murphy III is an outstanding player, who I think is probably going to be their starting small forward next year because I wouldn't expect Brandon Ingram to be on the team. The Pelicans need a really good point guard. Cavs have one of those in Darius Garland. Whatever you want to say about Garland's past year, he's still a really good point guard. He just had a really bad year. It's unfortunate, but it does happen. The Pelicans also, I think, need a pretty good center to go along with Zion Williamson. And I think for them, Jarrett Allen would be a huge upgrade over someone like a Jonas Valanciunas. I think that would be a really good fit. So that's why I do think as we get into the summer here, I think we're going to see a lot of conversation regarding the Cavs matching up really well with the Pelicans. And that would mean Brandon Ingram being what the Cavs are shooting for here in a return. I think what Ingram can provide that the Cavs don't have right now, one is length on the wing. They can sort of do that when Evan Mobley's playing the 4. If they want to stick him on the best defender, that's entirely possible. But I also think Ingram can provide a better quality of shot making on the outside and is a better attacker with the ball in his hands off the dribble than Evan Mobley is. I think Brandon Ingram is not a perfect player, and he's not the home run type of swing that the Cavs could take in this position. I think there's at least one guy that is better than Brandon Ingram, and I will talk about him coming up in just a little bit on today's show. But I do think Brandon Ingram, if traded to the Cavs, would solve a lot of the team's issues. It's not going to be he's not the savior coming to fix things. He's not going to come here and all of a sudden be the team's best player. I would expect that to be Donovan Mitchell. And as we have this conversation too, and I should have probably noted this a couple of minutes ago, but as we have this conversation, I am thinking along these lines under the assumption that Donovan Mitchell will sign an extension and will be starting for the Cavs next year. That's the assumption that I have to have when I'm having this conversation. Because if Donovan Mitchell doesn't sign that extension and wants out, it changes the entire conversation. You're looking at an entirely different type of trade landscape. And I just think that's really, really important to note here as we get going talking about these guys. But I do think what Brandon Ingram could provide is stuff that the Cavs are missing, where right now the NBA is filled, the best teams in the NBA, filled with guys, and they don't necessarily always have to be the best player in the team, but it's filled with guys that look like him. Maybe they're a little bit thicker than Brandon Ingram is, but they've got similar body types to where, he's somewhere between 6'7" and 6'9", lanky, can handle the basketball, can do a little bit of playmaking, is a solid shooter from the outside. I don't think his shot diet is everything you want it to be. I think he takes too many really difficult shots right now as a member of the Pelicans. I do think, though, if he's alongside someone in the backcourt that is elite, which he really hasn't been in his career to this point, if you put him alongside someone in the backcourt like a Donovan Mitchell, who is an elite level player, that I do think starts to maybe change the equation for him, where there's less pressure. And I know he maybe hasn't always been the best player on the Pelicans because Zion Williamson, when he's been healthy and available, has been so good for them. But it's a different kind of best player that you look at here, to where, okay, you've got a better player than him in the backcourt that can help to set him up, that can help to put him in better positions. And that's not to take anything away from someone like a CJ McCollum, who's a really good player, but I think that we would all agree Donovan Mitchell is just on probably 3 levels ahead of someone like a CJ McCollum, right? I think that's probably where we're at here. So I think that if Brandon Ingram were to get traded to the Cavs, his life would become so much easier offensively, and you would start to see some of those bad shots maybe not entirely disappear, because I think that he's always going to have just a little bit of that tough shot maker quality in him, which, hey, that's a good thing. Donovan Mitchell, I think, has some of that in him, where you see him take some of those shots at the elbow where, maybe it's not the most, analytically friendly shot is probably the best way to term it. Maybe it's not Daryl Morey's dream shot, I guess we could probably say, but you need to have a guy that can make those. And if you have 2 guys that can make that kind of shot, one of which is, at the size to where he can kind of get his own shot whenever, even if it's not always the best shot, that's something that is absolutely worth bringing into the equation. Now, what would the Cavs have to give up to get someone like Brandon Ingram? That, I think, becomes a really interesting discussion. It could be something like a challenge trade where, Brandon Ingram's value is not maybe as high as it once was. Darius Garland's value is maybe not as high as it once was. Their salaries match up pretty well. You could do a 1-for-1 swap there. You could. Or maybe you're a little tentative about wanting to part ways with Garland, Jarrett Allen and Karis LeVert, that is a trade that would work for Brandon Ingram just in terms of salary. That's a number that fits both ways. That trade, you plug that into the trade machine right now, that's improved. Now, the issue with Ingram is you're going to have to pay him. You're going to have to give him a contract extension. He's someone that would have to be traded to Cleveland under the impression that it's going to be a long-term partnership, that this isn't some sort of rental situation going on. Brandon Ingram, I think, would be a really, really good fit for the Cavs, but I don't think Brandon Ingram would be the best fit possible for the Cavs. I think there's a better one. I'll tell you who that is next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by Game Time. If you want last minute deals, if you want to save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you want to go see. If you want flash deals where you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of whatever game or event that you want to go to, Game Time is your place to go. They've also got zone deals where you can save even more when you choose, and I think that this is a really, really cool feature that Game Time has. You can choose the section you want to sit in, and you can get a better deal if you let Game Time pick out the seats. I think that's a really, really cool thing that they do. They've also got the lowest price guarantee, where if you find a lower price somewhere else, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That's great for peace of mind when you are shopping for tickets, but Game Time is the place to go. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets. If you're going to the Finals, I'm incredibly jealous. I wish I was going to the Finals. Game 1 tonight between Boston and Dallas in Boston. I cannot imagine what the TD Garden is going to be like. If you're listening to this in Boston and you want to go to the Finals, go to Game Time. They will help you find tickets to get in the door tonight. But download the Game Time app, create an account, and then use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDON NBA, and you can get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So the guy that I just talked about, Brandon Ingram, as someone that I think is a good fit for the Cavs. He's not a perfect basketball player. He's not. I understand he's got an all-star selection. I think he might be just a little bit high usage for this situation. But I do wonder, what are the Brooklyn Nets going to do this offseason? And as soon as I say the Brooklyn Nets, there's a player, Mikal Bridges, that instantly pops into your mind because he is the guy. If we were to talk that, okay, maybe Brandon Ingram is, to put this, I guess, in baseball terms, maybe Brandon Ingram's like hitting a double where you're really, really happy with that. But Mikal Bridges would be a home run for the Cavs. If he is available this offseason, and I don't know if he will be or not, I truly don't know if he'll be available because the Nets could go a number of different ways. They could decide that they want to rebuild. I know their owner, Joe Tsai, talked about wanting to be a sustainable organization where they want to really do things the right way and build up for the future. And just right now, that situation doesn't look like it's going anywhere positive. They don't have all their draft picks because of the trades that they've made in the past. They've got some of Phoenix's picks. They've got, I believe, some of Philly's picks. Their cap sheet is a really interesting, or I guess not their cap sheet, but their franchise overview in terms of the assets they have is really, really interesting to look at. And I know that they've been a team that has been maybe talked about as a fit for Donovan Mitchell. But that's more so been if Donovan reaches free agency. So like under that circumstance, that would be Donovan doesn't sign an extension in Cleveland this offseason, doesn't get traded somewhere, and then declines his player option next summer and becomes a free agent. The Nets would be able to have space to where they could sign him outright. That's great. I don't think that's going to happen. One, I think that's probably the most unlikely of the scenarios that we could have with Donovan, because I think the most likely thing with him is that he's going to sign an extension and stay in Cleveland. Second most likely is that he doesn't sign the extension and he ends up getting traded to a place that he will be long term. And the third most likely is he doesn't sign the extension, he stays in Cleveland or even gets traded and then becomes a free agent and goes somewhere else next year. I think that is the order of likelihood for me. And I think the only way he ends up in Brooklyn is if he hits free agency and they can sign him outright. And even then, I don't know what his interest level in Brooklyn would be, because that situation, if you add a Donovan Mitchell to the Brooklyn Nets, I don't think it makes them championship contenders. And I think for Donovan to want to move on from the situation he's in now, he would have to go to a place that it is truly a championship contention window. And I just don't think that's Brooklyn. I think they're too far away. So that makes me wonder, okay, if they're too far away, would they have interest in trading Bridges? And if they were, I think he would be the absolute best fit for the Cavs on the trade market. He does everything they need. He is an awesome defender. He can do some creation. I think he right now in Brooklyn, Bridges is sort of miscast as a number one. I don't think he's a number one. I think that's part of the reason why really the Brooklyn Nets have struggled, because he's just playing out of place. He's not where he needs to be. He's not a true number one guy. But he is really impressive. He can create for himself. He can do a little bit of creation for others. He's a fantastic defender. If you were to, and I do think, before we get further in this discussion, this is a guy the Cavs would have to give up a lot for. Like, if Mikal Bridges is going to be on the roster next year, I don't see how. One, I think it would have to be a 3-team trade. And two, I don't see how either Jarrett Allen or Darius Garland are not involved in that trade to get someone of Bridges' stature. Now, it would have to be a lot of moving pieces and parts, and we can get into, as we get closer to, trade season arriving and free agency and all that, we can put together some legitimate, we'll cook in the trade machine a little bit. We'll have some fun in the trade machine doing that stuff. But I think it would have to be more of a complicated trade for the Cavs to get that to happen. But I think if it were to happen, both Darius Garland and Jarrett Allen wouldn't be able to be on the roster for the Cavs next year. Like, I think they would have to end up giving up both of those guys, not because both of them would go to Brooklyn. Like, I don't know that Jarrett Allen makes a ton of sense, considering the Nets are probably going to give Nick Claxton a pretty big contract extension this summer. I don't know that Jarrett Allen would make a ton of sense going to Brooklyn. I think Darius Garland would be a fantastic fit in Brooklyn. I think that they need a player just like him. But the Cavs finding a way to land Bridges to where he can be someone that is, I think calling him a 3-and-D guy is unfair to him, because I think he's better than that. I think that he's like a super 3-and-D guy. He's a super wing, if you will, where he's not a superstar. I would be hesitant to call this a big three, but he is really the just upper echelon of a role player. And that doesn't do justice, I don't think, to his talent level, because there can be stretches where he can, if you need him to be, he can be the best player on your team for stretches. He can help to carry a team offensively. He is a game wrecker at times defensively. He is everything that the Cavs need. So you, just as a mock lineup here, if this were to happen, say the Cavs starting five could be Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus, Mikal Bridges, Dean Wade, and Evan Mobley. That's an awesome starting five. Like, that is a starting five that, if healthy, I think probably goes farther in the playoffs than this current Cavs team just did. And it's not because, again, it's not because this Cavs team isn't talented. They're super talented. But it's because this Cavs team, I think, needs to move around that talent. I think they need to play with one big. I think they need to play with one ball dominant guard. And I think they need to have three guys that can shoot on the outside. I think that's the recipe. And I cannot find a better fit. And I don't know that he'll be available. But if he is available, the Cavs should absolutely be calling than Mikal Bridges. I don't think I can find one. But what the Nets are going to do, we talk about the Cavs as one of the most interesting teams this offseason, and I truly do believe they are one of the most interesting teams, that there's going to be things in the NBA that don't happen until we find out what direction the Cavs are going to go this summer. But I think that the Brooklyn Nets are another one, because if they make Mikal Bridges available, he's going to fetch a lot in the trade market, and I think it would be a really, really, really wise thing for the Cavs to be involved in those conversations. I think that would be something that would absolutely take this team another level up. They couldn't be finished there. Like, you're not just snapping your fingers and you're done building your roster because you made that move. You would have to do other things around the edges. But man, that would be a really, really big swing for the Cavs, and I think it would be the one that I would like the most. That's the deal that I would like to see the most this offseason if it's available. I don't know what direction the Nets are going to go. We'll have to wait and see, but they're a fascinating team to watch too as this offseason arrives. Today's Locked On Cavs also brought to you by Prize Picks. With Prize Picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000 just in a single game by watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. That's as long as this read. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, then you're locked in. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has you covered every week. From lowering select player stats projections on Tuesdays, which of course obviously increases your chance of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back on Fridays if you put together a losing lineup. This week on Prize Picks, as the NBA Finals have arrived, the thing I'm looking at for Game 1, I really like Luka Doncic over 31.5 points. I think he's the best player in the world right now. I know Boston's got a lot of really good defenders. I just don't think there's anyone in basketball that can defend Luka Doncic. Like, I think if Luka Doncic wants to go out and score 40 points, Luka's probably going to score 40 points. The other play that I like with Prize Picks for Game 1, Kristaps Porzingis is set at 15.5. I like the under. I like going under there. He hasn't played in a month. I cannot imagine he's going to play a full workload of minutes. I just think getting up to 16 points is going to be a really difficult thing. So those would be my selections there. But download the Prize Picks apps today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, LOCKEDONNBA. Use that promo code and you get a first deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Go with Prize Picks. So there are also a couple of guys that I think are worth mentioning that we might hear their names pop up as trade targets, but this is where we get to the point, and it's not to say there aren't more guys that I'm interested in, because there are. But there are a couple of guys like that I don't think would be good fits in the Cavs. The first one that I want to talk about is Golden State's Andrew Wiggins. I just don't know how much longer that relationship is going to continue on in Golden State. I think that if they want to sort of remake their team, Wiggins is someone that you could see them want to move on from this summer. And for me, it's not that he's not a good player. Like, he's a fine player, but it's just kind of that. Like, he's just okay. Once upon a time, I covered the Timberwolves. I was around Andrew a lot. He's a nice enough guy. He's not someone that's like bad to have in your locker room or anything like that. But so often you find yourself watching him play, and you just come away wanting a little bit more than he provides. Like, to me, at times, it has seemed like he could just kind of float through games. Like, there are definitely glimpses of great athleticism. One of the things that has always stood out to me about his game is his second jump. So, like, when you jump and then come back down and how quick you can jump back up is really, really great. Like, he's got that sort of athleticism. It's just far too often it's like, oh, Andrew Wiggins played tonight? And that for me is not something that, and, his best stretch of his career obviously came in the playoffs in 2022 when the Warriors won the finals. And he was awesome then, but I think for most of his career, it's been a struggle to see him be really engaged on a night-to-night basis. And yeah, he's someone that you can count on. He's going to play. I know he's had some off-the-court stuff, but it's really not someone that gets hurt a whole ton. I just don't think that he's someone that, if you were to trade Jarrett Allen or Darius Garland for someone like him, if you're going to trade one of those guys, I think you have to be able to walk away from that trade and say, yeah, it was tough to part with an all-star, but we got better, right? The Cavs have to be able to say, we got better by making that trade. If they were to trade for a guy like Andrew Wiggins and they look in the mirror and say that, I think they're lying to themselves. So he's kind of first on my list as someone that you might hear about, but I'm just not overly interested in. Like, that's not someone that I think would come in and elevate this roster from one that lost in 5 games of the second round to one that can make a conference finals run or find a way to get hot at the right time and see themselves in the NBA finals next year. I don't think Wiggins does that for them. The other guy that we might hear, and I've seen comments that you guys have left about Jeremy Grant, that's one that just like it doesn't move the needle for me a ton. I think Jeremy Grant is a fine player. I think he's a good enough player, but I can't wrap my head around giving up an all-star for Jeremy Grant. Like, how much does he elevate the Cavs? Yes, he does some things that the Cavs absolutely are missing, that the Cavs need to find. But is he worth giving up an all-star for? Is that worth it with Jeremy Grant? I'm not so sure. I don't think so. That would be another one where if they took some truth serum over at Cleveland Clinic Courts, made that trade, looked themselves in the mirror, are they really going to say, we got better? I don't know. I don't know if that would be the case. I really don't. I would love to hear from you guys as well. Who do you want to see the Cavs trade for? Because I think there are a number of guys out there. I don't think this roster is going to look the same. I really don't think this roster is going to look like it does right now when the Cavs start their season next October. I think that there are going to be changes to this roster, but what it's going to be, I think, is going to be really interesting to see. Another reminder I wanted to give today, tomorrow's episode of Locked On Cavs, as I'm new here, right? We're getting to know each other. It's been a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying getting to interact with you guys. I love reading the comments that you guys have had on YouTube, on Twitter. You can find me at Real D Cunningham, on Reddit. I've loved all of it. I want to do a mailbag episode on Friday. It might actually be 2 episodes. You can send your questions in, tweet them at Real D Cunningham, comment below if you're watching on YouTube. I really do want to get to know you guys a little bit better. Definitely a lot of Cavs stuff, but if you've got some other stuff that might not be, super nuts and bolts Cavs, maybe you want to learn a little bit about me, we can get to some of that stuff too. So keep that in mind for Friday. I'm super excited. Again, it's been a blast getting to know you guys through this first week here on Locked On Cavs. I cannot wait to grow this show. I think that you guys are such a good fan base, and I'm so pumped to get to talk to you about the Cleveland Cavaliers every single day. I really have enjoyed this so far. I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to me talk about the Cavs. I've got some great guests that are going to be coming on in the next couple of weeks. Very, very excited for that as we continue down, barreling toward free agency, which is going to be such an exciting summer for the Cavaliers. And of course, we're still waiting on a coaching hire. The Cavs are going to make a hire at head coach at some point. We've heard a number of different names that have been thrown out that the Cavs have received permission to interview. So we will wait and see. Again, if you've got questions for a Friday mailbag, tweet them at Real D Cunningham or comment on YouTube. I will get to as many questions as I can on the Friday episode of Locked On Cavs. But until then, subscribe, rate the show, give us 5 stars. It will help us grow. Comment on YouTube, watch on YouTube. Give us that thumbs up on YouTube as well. Again, really, really appreciate everything you guys are doing. It's been a blast so far. Cannot wait for tomorrow's mailbag, and I will talk to you then.